Hey there, welcome to my sewing channel. The reason that you are seeing this video is because you must have recently purchased my Wristlet Clutch sewing pattern. So thank you for that. I really appreciate the support. A couple tips and tricks. If you are using cork, you can always assume that anything that I say about sewing is in reference to cork. If you're using vinyl, leather, Craftex, wax cotton, anything like that, I will need you to use your own expertise and knowledge when deciding on needles, stitch length, things of that nature. I do know a little bit about each of them, so if you have any specific questions, feel free to ask me, but if you're not getting what you need from me, be sure to ask in my sewing group that I will link in the description box below. You can join there and ask. We have lots and lots of smart seamstresses, tailor, I don't know, people who sew. We have lots of smart people who sew in the group, so be sure to join that. So yes, today I'm going to walk you through how to make my wristlet clutch pattern. This one I used the angled bottom accent, as you can see. I reference this in the pattern, but this is a raw edge here. And then I just top stitched. And so the stitch length that I recommend with cork is anywhere between a 3 and a 4. I used a 3.5 on this bag. I also recommend a Micro-tex needle. Size 12 or 14 is what I tend to go for. And then I'm not particular about my thread, but I do like 40 weight so that you can see and it makes a nice obvious stitch line. So those are just my preferences there. In this video, I'll be making this specific bag, and I do not line my cotton, and I do not line or interface my cork either. And so as you can see, it's nice and sturdy, holds up well. And yeah, that's really about it. So let me know if you have any questions. Be sure to hit the little black circle narwhal button that's around here somewhere. That will subscribe you to my YouTube channel, and you will be the first to know about any upcoming releases or free patterns or blah, 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 all that good stuff. So yeah, enjoy. Happy sewing. All right, so to get started on making the wristlet clutch, you need to cut out all of your supplies. I have 2 main body panels, which are 7 tall by 10 wide. I have 2 lining fabric pieces, and I am not interfacing these, and these are 6.75 tall, excuse me, by 10 wide. I have 1 11-inch zipper, and I am using the angle bottom piece that's included in the pattern, so I cut that out of my accent cork. And I have my wrist strap here, which is 14 long by 1.5 inches wide, 1 lobster clasp, swivel clasp, and then 1 rivet. So the first thing that I'm going to do is attach my tag, which I glued it down 1.25 inches in from the top edge here and centered on both sides. And then the next thing I'm going to do is glue down my accent piece. So I am just going to put glue all along just this top edge here of the accent bottom piece. The glue that I'm using, as always, is Beacon Fabri-Tac, available from Beacon Adhesives. And then I'm going to line up the left, bottom, and right edges of my accent piece onto my main panel and glue that into place. You can see it's like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to my machine, and I'm going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch just across the top edge of my accent. And then I'm also going to stitch my tag down. So the next thing I'm going to do is lift up just the bottom accent piece and kind of fold it back a little, being gentle as not to crease the cork, and then leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to cut this bottom main panel off just to reduce bulk for the end product. Sorry, words. So you can see that I cut it off here, and then we've got one big main panel now. And then I just top stitched my tag down. So the next thing I'm going to do is, with my glue, I'm going to just put a thin line across the top front main panel. And then I'm going to take my zipper with the zipper head facing left. I'm going to flip it so that it's right side down on the main panel and glue it into place. And the reason I call for an 11-inch zipper is because that gives you enough clearance on the right and left side of the main panel, so you don't have to worry about hitting the zipper stops whenever you're sewing. So I'm going to complete my zipper sandwich and glue down my lining. If you have a directional lining, you want to be aware of its placement. You'll want the top, the right side of the directional fabric to be going face down or right side down on the zipper sandwich towards the top of the panel. All right, so now that that is set, I'm going to go ahead and prep my strap here. I always use bobby pins for this step. And so what I'm going to do is fold one long edge in 1/2 inch and finger press it. And then I just like to do it all in one swoop. So as I fold this 1/2 inch up, I'm going to fold the other 1/2 inch down over top of it. And then bobby pin it into place. There we go. So I'm going to move back over to the machine and top stitch my strap down and then do the zipper on this front panel. If you can tell, I've got the open side of the strap in, so that's the side that I'm sewing down first, and so then you don't have to add the bobby pins to the back of the strap because that is where the fold is, so it'll hold its own edge, and then you just sew all the way down the right side, moving your bobby pins out of the way. You don't want to sew over them. And then you're going to pivot, sew across the bottom, and then back up this right side. And when I'm making straps, I like to keep one finger on either side of the strap, and then I have the guide down here to keep it straight, and then you can go as fast as you're comfortable. So I'm going to get my main panel sewed down. So just to touch back on this accent panel. So if you're not doing the accent panel, then obviously you would just skip this step totally. But if you're doing any of the 6 that are included in the pattern, you're going to do them the same way. So if you're doing just the accent corners, you're going to glue them down in one corner and then the other corner here, and then top stitch, trim the excess. Same with all the rest of them. If you're doing the circular one or the rounded or the pyramid, you're going to do the same thing that I did for this one. And so when I'm sewing cotton to a zipper that is not interfaced, I always like to sew from the cork side. So I'm going to flip mine cork side up And I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance on my zipper, so I'm using a number 3 nylon coil zipper. Ooh, I barely won bobbin roulette. So I'm going to wind a bobbin, be right back. All right, so you're back in business. So I have just done the line across the top here of the zipper sandwich. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just gently flip up just the main panel, leaving the lining panel down, and I'm going to reach in and grab the zipper, and then I'm going to carefully, while applying pressure all the way across the zipper tape, I'm going to start finger pressing just the cork side down. You want to make sure that you're maintaining a nice even line here. And then once you've got it all finger pressed, what you're going to do is just slide the cork side up, back under your zipper, or back under your foot, and then we're going to sew our top stitch seam here. So this can take some dexterity. You'll feel that everything kind of wants to flip up and move, but if you just lift up on the main panel and press down on the whole zipper section again, this bottom section under here will lay back down and you can continue your finger press. And while you're sewing this, you'll see your zipper tape should be nice and straight. You shouldn't, if you see waves and things like that, then you'll want to take it back off and refold so that you have a nice straight zipper. All right, so I'm going to trim my little threads here. And then what you do is just pick it all up and you're going to pull just the lining side down. So as you can see, now we have one main panel with the zipper sandwich. We have the main front exterior right side up, and then the zipper is right side up with the head on the left side. And if you flip it, you have your lining right side up as well. So your zipper sandwich makes your lining and your main go wrong sides together. Okay, so the next step is we're going to make the zipper sandwich on the other side of the zipper tape. So I'm going to grab my other main panel. This will be the back exterior panel. I'm going to glue just across the top edge here. And then you can either flip this main panel to the top and lay it on top of your zipper tape, lining up the top edges, or you can flip this entire zipper sandwich onto your main panel, which I prefer to do that way. I like to be able to see the zipper tape as I'm gluing. And so something important here is you want to make sure that both of your main panels, the right and left sides, are even. You don't want to worry about the bottom right now because there's going to be a gap. So don't worry about that quite yet. So once that glue sets, which it does very quickly, we're going to glue our remaining lining panel to the wrong side of the zipper tape, right side down. Again, keeping an eye on your right and left side edges here. And then there we go. So now what I'm going to do is just top stitch this in, or stitch and then flip and top stitch this into place like I did the last one. All right, so here we are back at the machine and we have our remaining panel zipper sandwich. And again, I'm going to flip to where the cork side is up. And I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance and get this zipper sandwich sewn together. All right, so same as before, what we're going to do is reach in between the layers. This time you're going to be reaching in between the two main panels, and you're going to reach up to the zipper tape in here, and then flip that remaining main panel, the back main panel down, and then start to finger press. And so when you're finger pressing, you want to create, you're folding the main panel down on top of the zipper tape, catching this edge that you just made. Just maybe you should point that out too, because you don't want that seam allowance to be flipped under the zipper. You want it to be flipped under the main panel. So now I'm going to top stitch this into place just like before. So flip everything over. You're going to take this remaining lining panel and flip it down, so then you have lining panel, wrong side of the zipper, lining panel. On the other side, the flat lay is the main front lining or zipper, and then the main back. All right, so we are already almost done, and the next step that we're going to do is we need to lay our strap onto the left side of our front main panel. And so what I'm going to do is grab a clip, and I am going to measure 1 inch down from the zipper and lay one short raw edge right there at the 1 inch line. You can eyeball this if you want. Really, the strap placement is a matter of preference. That's just where I've always done it. Feel free to move it higher or lower depending on how you want it to look. So now that we've got our strap pinned into place, or clipped into place, I'm going to unzip my zipper halfway. Oh goodness, there we go. And then I'm going to flip this back exterior panel down, lining up the right bottom and left side edges, and clip this into place. So I'm going to move this clip that's holding the strap just so that I can get all 3 layers in now. And then I'm just going to clip all around. And then what you're going to do is flip this other lining piece down to be right sides together with the second lining piece. And then clip these as well. And then we need to mark our birthing hole down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark in 2 inches from each edge, 2 inches and a half inch up. From both sides. And then so what we're going to do is when we start sewing, we're going to situate the sewing to where the side that we clipped the strap into place is closest to our body, because then we're going to start up here at this lining birthing hole line. We want to attach the strap first. If you start sewing on this side, it's just going to get kind of wonky because you have to move your strap out of the way because it's hanging out back here. So just the side that you clipped your strap in on, make sure that's facing your body. And when you start sewing, you're going to start with a 1/2 inch seam allowance down here on the lining, and sew until it's a 1/2 inch for whenever you turn to sew up this edge. And then the trick is we're going to taper it out. Probably a bad example using a pen, but we're going to taper it out from a 1/2 inch here down to a 1/4 inch up here at the zipper. And so if you want to, you can make those lines to make it easier to follow on both sides. Or you can, again, just eyeball it. As you're sewing, you just want to make sure that you go from this wider edge down here to a narrower edge seam allowance up here. And when we're sewing all the way around the bag, we're going to maintain that 1/4 inch seam allowance that we start at the zipper. Let's see, other tips and tricks. Slow down, go slow when you're sewing over your zippers here. This is a bit bulky. And whenever you're sewing over your strap over here, you also want to go slow because you have this one. Let me see if I can zoom in a little better. Whenever you sew up here onto your zipper, until you get to your strap, it's kind of dark, but until you get to your strap, you only have about 1 inch. So you want to make sure that you don't skip stitches or anything in this section, because you're going from bulk to no bulk to back to big bulk. Your machine might want to try to skip, so just be sure to go slow. When you're sewing over your strap, make sure that you add some stay stitches in here. We're going to maintain the 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around the main body panels. And then when we get over here, I'll show you when I'm sewing, but you're going to pull your strap into the bag. We're not going to sew over this strap here. And then the 1/4 inch comes all the way up to the zipper, and then as you can see in my lines, if you can tell, I'm not sure, but you're going to taper back out to this 1/2 inch seam allowance down here. Okay, so I have my bag situated with my clipped in strap, raw edges meeting the main panel on this side. So I'm going to start sewing down here on this lining. And another tip that you might want to adopt is, if you can see my lines, see how I have like an L down here to demarcate the 1/2 inch seam allowance? I'm gonna start sewing here at this bottom edge and sew up that L and across. Because what that does is whenever you're flipping your lining panels in on the next step, these little L shapes just create a nice folded edge, and it just guides the lining middle to where it needs to go. So I'm gonna start down here, bottom of my L, back stitch really well through here, pivot, maintaining that 1/2 inch, sew to a 1/2 inch on this side, pivot, and then we're going to sew up and taper to a 1/4 inch. Back stitch over your zipper, back stitch over your strap, and then keep that 1/4 inch seam allowance and sew all the way around your main body panels. Alright, so when you get to this strap tail over here, what I like to do is reach in between my lining layers, grab the strap, and you're going to have to go through the zipper too. Grab the strap and pull it out so that it's sticking out of the lining. Alright, now I'm tapering back to my 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to sew down that little L. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to trim my seam allowances here on the lining. I don't like to use my rotary cutter over my zipper, so I always cut with pinking shears. I bring this trim in pretty darn close. It's about 1/8 when I trim it. And then, so what we're gonna do is flip everything through. So you're gonna reach into your lining panels. I'm right-handed, so I have to flip. You're gonna unzip your zipper in there. Probably can't see because it's so dark, but now what I'm gonna do is just start to flip my bag out through this birthing hole. Then I'm gonna roll back this top panel and push it out to get that seam to come out nicely. I'll do the same thing on the side panels here. Oh no, I forgot to add my second line of stitching in my strap, so I'm actually gonna flip my bag back the other way and go back and add a second line of stitching here. Don't you hate it when you make it see the light at the end of the tunnel and you remember that you forget something? Okay, so what I'm going to do is here, this raw edge where my strap is at, I'm going to go back and add a second strength stitch line here, just to be sure that when the bag is in use and it has all this pressure on this strap, that it doesn't come undone. Alright, so I went ahead and added that second stitch line. Sorry, my lighting in here is pretty bad today. It's been really overcast and gross the last few days. There you go, you can see it. Alright, so now I'm going to flip it all back out again. An easier way to do this is if you tuck in both of your corners of the main panels and then push it through. Then you can grab those main panels. Reach in there and push out your zipper. this side you'll see it once it'll lay flat, but I like to have angles on my bottom corners here, and then I like to mirror those angles with the top zipper edges. So I just kind of eyeball the bottom angles here, and then you can see this top zipper edge just automatically makes that angle because there's so much bulk right in there. And then we'll angle this one whenever we zip it all together. So the second to last step is we're going to take our lining and we're just going to fold the two raw edges in toward the middle of the bag. Sorry, you can probably hear my dog snoring. I apologize. He's out. Alright, so we're going to clip this birthing hole now that we've got our edges nice and lined up. Here we go. So I am just going to now stitch from the top corner of the lining all the way down to the bottom corner here. Alright, so I got my bottom lining edge stitched down. I went ahead and hit it with an iron too because it was a little bit wrinkly from manipulating it so much. The last step to the main construction is we're going to tuck everything inside. I just want to reach in there and flatten everything out as nicely as possible. And then this is where we're going to angle this zipper side. So I'm just going to push it in while pulling it out to create an acute angle. An acute? I don't know if that's right. I don't remember. I do use math still, not geometry. Well, I guess kind of. I don't know. Whatever. Math. So here you go. You can see I want it just a little bit more angled to match the other ones. Now you can see 1 angle, 2, 3, and 4. And so to finish this bad boy off, what I'm going to do is I am going to trim my corners off on my strap because that's just how I do it. And then I'm going to take my lobster clasp. I'm going to slide it on to 3/4 of an inch and fold it up. So 3/4 of an inch, slide the lobster clasp, and then fold it up and over. Then I'm going to take my hole punch and just eyeball a middle piece here, punch through there, grab my rivet, and then use my rivet press. So if you're making these to sew, you can tell people, or at least what I tell people, is that they can unhook the zipper strap here. If they're going shopping or anything, they can wrap the strap around the handle of the cart and then re-clip it to the zipper, or around their belt loop if they don't want to carry it or whatever. But that's always a selling point that I use for people. And so, yeah, the very last step is you clip it to the bottom section of the zipper tab, or not tab, but the zipper pull. So the 1/2 inch lobster clasp won't fit through that top piece, so you have to put it down here. I don't know if you can tell. Yeah, see the hole in the bottom? That's where you're going to stick it through. And then there we go. 1 completed wristlet clutch. And so you leave it zipped, or you leave it clipped to the zipper. And it's a nice open wide pouch. And there we go. So another thing, the last thing that I like to do is whenever it's all completed, after I'm done finger pressing, I put it, put something heavy on top of it. And so I personally put mine in my printer. So, you know, like the copier section of a printer, I lift that up and slide this in there. And then I put something heavy on top of it, which I know is probably not best practice, but it works for me. But you'll see, especially if you're using cork, it stays kind of poofy. And so if you don't like that, if you want it to be more flat, then yeah, just lay something heavy on it. So once again, thank you so much for joining me today and for purchasing this wristlet clutch sewing pattern. If you, again, have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them below and I will do my best to get to you. Be sure to join my sewing group on Facebook, follow me on Instagram, and click subscribe to that little black narwhal that's around here. I really appreciate you and I hope that you make many more wristlet clutches. Be sure to post them so I can see them.